red flag. And I hope that states can, take cue from the center and some of the more progressive states that are investing in capital expenditure. That is what will deliver sustained growth. And second, not as much as a worry, but I'll just as a reminder, I think it is important for a lot of the reforms that had been announced, post-COVID, for those to be completed. For instance, if you take the labor law, the bill has been passed in Parliament. Also, obviously, the political capital was invested at that time. The subordinate legislation on that needs to be passed. Overall, many reforms that actually were announced, I think those should be brought to completion. So that's the second aspect that I would actually highlight primarily for the future.
For 16 years, NDTV has been a constant presence here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Join me, Vishnu Shom, and my colleague Neeraj Shah of NDTV Profit as we bring you the best programming from the World Economic Forum.
And across the spectrum of voices, Vishnu, because we talk to some of the top political voices, the top business voices, and more all through the next 4 days.
And it is a particularly difficult year of the World Economic Forum. There are wars taking place, there is global economic uncertainty, and a lot more. We'll be bringing you the best voices and the best analysis for the best Davos. Join us on NDTV.
The new Ayodhya, idols and the craftsmanship, the artists and their creation.
सूर्य की किरण गर्भगृह में आ सके और रिफ्लेक्ट होकर के वो माथे पर भगवान के किरण पड़े।
वो सबको पसंद आया और उसमें हमने एक मंजिल और बढ़ा दी ताकि लंबाई चौड़ाई के हिसाब से ऊंचाई भी बढ़े।
The pilgrims, the tourists and the politics. Tradition and heritage, emotions of the people.
अयोध्या भारत की सर्वश्रेष्ठ धार्मिक नगरी के रूप में स्थापित हुई।
Every aspect of Ayodhya's transformation and the grand temple opening on NDTV 24/7.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
Salam UAE. Are you ready to witness the biggest realty award show that honors and celebrates the achievements of realtors, developers, and real estate companies? The Ultimate Realty Awards 2024 is brought to you by NKN Media in partnership with NDTV. This marks a significant milestone in the real estate industry. You can nominate your brand by simply visiting ultimaterealtyawards.com under the category that best suits your brand. The nominations are open until 20th January. See you at the awards.
If we go by the projection, FY24 at 7.3%, last year's growth was 7.2%. And as I just mentioned that, once investment starts, especially private investment starts picking up, that accelerates the virtuous cycle. I would therefore expect and, project a growth of 7% plus for India for FY25 and beyond.
For 16 years, NDTV has been a constant presence here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Join me, Vishnu Shom, and my colleague Neeraj Shah of NDTV Profit as we bring you the best programming from the World Economic Forum.
And across the spectrum of voices, Vishnu, because we talk to some of the top political voices, the top business voices, and more all through the next 4 days.
And it is a particularly difficult year of the World Economic Forum. There are wars taking place. There is global economic uncertainty and a lot more. We'll be bringing you the best voices and the best analysis for the best Davos. Join us on NDTV.
Salam UAE, are you ready to witness the biggest reality award show to honor and celebrate the achievements of realtors, real estate companies and property developers in the UAE? The Ultimate Reality Awards 2024 is brought to you by NKN Media in partnership with NDTV, which marks a significant milestone in the spectrum of the reality landscape. You can nominate your brand by simply visiting www.ultimaterealityawards.com under the category that suits best for your brand. See you at the awards.
$400 flights delayed in 24 hours as fog sweeps Delhi. Amid a 12-hour delay, passenger assaults pilot. Videos viral on social media now. Aviation Minister warns unruly passengers. Amid flight disruptions, DGCA has issued new guidelines, may cancel flights delayed over 3 hours. NDTV exclusive, Delhi-Mumbai Air India flight delayed by 17 hours. Exclusive, passenger narrates the flight ordeal that she faced, stuck inside plane for 6 hours. Congress no to Mandir invite but yes to Ram. Congress leaders holy dip in Ayodhya. Meanwhile, the temple trust has laid out the Pran Pratishta plan, Mandir to open for darshan from the 23rd of January. Cricketer Sachin Tendulkar is the latest victim of deep fake menace. Disturbing Sachin flags rampant misuse of technology. IT Minister says he will notify tougher rules shortly. Roadmap for future. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks to Putin. PM says useful exchange on global and regional issues. NDTV is at Davos. World leaders in a huddle at the World Economic Forum. NDTV is at Davos tracking the event, climate, economy and culture in focus. WEF boss tells NDTV India to become a 10 billion economy in 3 years. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching NDTV and this is the last word. So there's politics of religion and there's politics of religiosity. But when it comes to the Ram temple, the opposition is trying hard to not upset the Ram Bhakts, even as it has strongly declined the invite to be part of the Ram temple consecration slated to happen on the 22nd of January. While the Congress has officially declined the offer to be part of the Ram Mandir inauguration ceremony in Ayodhya, its Uttar Pradesh unit and many other leaders offered prayers in the holy city today, making it clear that they are not against the temple. Even as parties like Samajwadi Party and Aam Aadmi Party have been critical in the way BJP has handled the temple issue, they are putting in place their own plans to safeguard themselves and their politics on the perceived rise of religious sentiment across the country. For instance, the Aam Aadmi Party has decided to have Sundar Kant recitals in all 70 assembly constituencies of Delhi. Meanwhile, Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav is reported to have said that he, along with his family members, would visit Ayodhya after the inaugural ceremony of the temple, but will not be part of the January 22nd event. Former Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, whose party is a key constituent of the opposition alliance, has also decided not to take part in the Grand Ayodhya event. Instead, he has said that he will offer puja at Panchvati, where Lord Ram is said to have spent time in his exile. All these parties have used absence of some Shankaracharyas from the event to target the organizers. However, mindful of how skipping the event may be perceived by people in the run-up to Lok Sabha elections, opposition leaders clearly don't want to be seen as hurting Hindu sentiments, but will saying yes to Lord Ram but no to the temple ceremony, which they argue is more political than religious, be a successful strategy, especially at a time when the event seems to have captured the imagination of all people. The dilemma is real here, and the pronouncements, sometimes at variance with the stated line, reflect just that. So is the opposition dousing the fire on the Ram Temple issue, or on its own position, or trying to assuage the Hindus but not wanting to get into the domain of BJP's strengths of religion and identity? We'll discuss that today with a panel of experts, but first, a report on this.
Makar Sankranti, a day that marks a new beginning, but for the opposition, their Dharm Sankat seems to be persisting. Boycott BJP's Ram Mandir consecration show of strength, yet remain true to Ram in a fine balancing act. Senior Congress leaders, including those from Uttar Pradesh, took a dip in the Saryu chanting Jai Shri Ram.
श्री राम लल्ला जी के पावन दर्शन करके आशीर्वाद प्राप्ति के लिए हम यहाँ आए हैं। मैं पहले भी आता रहा।
आस्था प्रभु राम के प्रति, प्रभु कृष्ण के प्रति हमेशा से रही है।
This is Rahul Gandhi crisscrossed Manipur on day 2 of his Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra, soon after the Grand Old Party set the tone for the opposition by formally declining BJP's Ram Mandir consecration invite. Rahul will clearly keep the party busy with his yatra as the rest of the nation goes into the Jai Siya Ram mode, begging the question, is there a disconnect between the party and its workers?
उन्होंने आज तक राम मंदिर का विरोध किया, कोर्ट में भी इसके खिलाफ एफिडेविट दिए, और वही कांग्रेस के नेता आज पूरे देश का लोगों की नब्ज देखकर आज यहाँ पर मंदिर का दर्शन करने आ रहे।
In Delhi, it was the Aam Aadmi Party's Ram Ke Naam moment. The party will kick off Sundarkand and Hanuman Chalisa parts across Delhi from Tuesday.
2600 से ज़्यादा जगहों पे सुंदरकांड का कार्यक्रम जो है आम आदमी पार्टी क्या करेगी। मुझे लगता है कि चाहे वो भारतीय जनता पार्टी हो या कोई और पार्टी हो, उनको इस चीज़ पे एतराज़ नहीं होना चाहिए।
On another front in Patna, Nitish Kumar got a warm welcome as he walked down to Lalu and Rabri Devi's residence with Lallan Singh in tow for the customary Sankranti Dahi Chura get-together. Tejasvi received the entourage at the gate. This breaking of bread between the allies comes amid speculation about Nitish's role in the larger India bloc.
इनको पीएम का सपना दिखा करके इनको एनडीए गठबंधन से बाहर लाया गया, और आज इनके सपना को इनके बड़े भाई चकनाचूर कर रहे हैं।
In Uttar Pradesh, BSP Supremo Mayawati chose Sankranti to mark a fresh beginning of sorts. She said no to any pre-poll alliance, steering clear of the India bloc, though a pragmatic Behenji hasn't ruled out a post-poll alliance.
हमारी पार्टी सभी विरोधी पार्टियों से अपनी दूरी बना के रखेगी.
With Congress leaders chanting Jai Shri Ram slogans in Ayodhya, to Aam Aadmi Party deciding to take out a Sundarkand in Delhi, clearly in run-up to the Lok Sabha elections, politics is hotting up with Ram Mandir taking the center stage in national politics. In Ayodhya, with my camera colleague Pavan Kumar, Himanshu Shekhar for NDTV.
We have Smita Prakash, editor ANI, Pavan Verma, former MP, Rajya Sabha and former senior leader TMC and JDU. We have Sanju Verma, national spokesperson BJP, Tehseen Poonawalla, political analyst who supports the Congress, and Ghanshyam Tiwari, who is Samajwadi Party spokesperson, joining us on this debate. Starting with you, Dr. Verma, how do you see this optics of decline when it comes to the opposition's position? Because clearly, they said one thing, but the optics of it now, the projection of how they are looking at it seems to be very different now.
My own view is that the opposition's reaction was ad hoc, confused, contradictory, and inconsistent. And there is a reason why I say it. You see, once you have welcomed the Supreme Court judgment as the basis for the construction of the Ram temple at Ayodhya, to then cavil about attending the inaugural ceremony is self-contradictory. You could say that we would happily attend, or if you were invited, or you could say it's a matter of great joy But since the inauguration is only for a few, we will go with our cadres on another day and have a special ceremony on 9th of April or whenever Ram Navami is, which is what the correct day should have been. But to do neither of these, to remain undecided like the Congress first couldn't say yes or no to the invitation. Then they finally said no to it. They were unclear about whether to call it the politicization of the temple or to divert attention from it through the Nyaya Yatra. So I find the policy self-defeating for Akhilesh Yadav, who is in Chief Minister as the principal opposition, not to attend the opening of the Ram temple because it is being politicized while accepting that it's the consequence of a Supreme Court judgment. Of course, you have yourself put it, there will be politics, and the BJP has chosen a date where it will give it maximum dividends for the elections which are forthcoming. However, that was only to be expected. You had to have a strategy to dilute that impact while reposing faith in the Supreme Court judgment and Maryada Purushottam Ram. In that strategy, the opposition has failed.
Right. Sir, do you think that the opposition needs a better counter when it comes to, say, countering Hindutva or matters of faith? And what would your advice to the opposition be right now? Because a lot of unfortunate incidents that have happened in the past, including firing on the Karsevaks or somebody or the DMK calling, Lord Ram Amit, are being raked now.
Frankly, now it's too late for substantial rectification or correction. We are literally in the lead up to the inauguration. And whatever damage has to be done has been done. Either you have a clear stand like the CPIM, that we do not attend religious events, especially which involve the Prime Minister and a particular community. But the other political parties, I'm not clear. I mean, here is a situation where Uddhav Thackeray's Shiv Sena was perhaps even more enthusiastic than the BJP in the making of the temple. They are not going. And here is a situation where the Congress, to be honest, is not, it's not that they're not going, they're not clear what their strategy is, you see. And by now, how do you rectify things? The momentum for the inauguration. And by the way, the meticulous work on the ground that has been done by BJP to prepare for this event. Akshat is being distributed in every village in North India at least. And it has created a huge ripple of support for the temple. And here there are important leaders of the opposition who have decided to boycott. So the BJP will milk the situation to the fullest. There were several options earlier where you could have said it's not the BJP event, it's an event of the nation. It's a result of a legal procedure. We will happily go, but not necessarily on the inaugural date. We will go on a certain date, or we will participate, but we request the BJP not to politicize it because it is not their decision. But the BJP having been at the forefront for the building of the Ram temple, let's concede that. I'm not saying the methods employed earlier were correct. When the masjid was demolished illegally, the action was amaryadat, which was not in conformity with Maryada Purushottam Ram. But this time, a due process has been followed. And you have to have a strategy in order to meet this new situation.
Right. So that's a very interesting point, Smita Prakash. For more of this context setting, I was listening to Congress leader Deepinder Hooda today, and after his bath in the Saryu waters, he said that Ram sabke hain aur Ram sab mein hai, and he said that he has been to Ayodhya in the past, which is basically last year also. So do you believe that many of these programs that are being announced by the opposition now, be it Sundarkand recitals or visits to Panchvati, are in some ways an afterthought, because clearly the BJP and Prime Minister seem to have presented that development plan for Ayodhya. They have also, PM has also talked about his Yam Niyam rigorous processes that he'll follow. So from development to spirituality to civilization, there seems to be a lot of ground that has been covered here.
Well, Vasudha, I won't say that anything is wrong in saying that Ram sabke hain or sab mein Ram base hain. Nothing wrong in what they said. Whether politically they are too late in taking that stand or saying it, well, time will tell. The fact is that, everybody is seeing that there is a transformational shift which is happening in India. That period of shying away from one's faith or one's tradition, one's culture, whatever you might call it, because they're all overlapping at this stage. You can see it. They are not compartmentalized. They never were initially compartmentalized, but somewhere in that period of those decades of Nehruvian socialism, whether on the economic front or on the social front, it somehow took a backseat. Now this change that is coming about, one can either embrace it or one can keep one distance from it, but it is a reality. You can't be oblivious to that, especially if you're in a leadership position, Vasudha. Now you can be a business leader, you can be a politician, you can be an educationist, or even a religious head for that matter, of any sect. If you are in a leadership position and you cannot see that there is or you don't want to see that there is a changing landscape, that there is a collective consciousness of a nation which is coming to its own, and this mandir is but a symbol of that coming to its own. And if you don't see that, then I'm afraid that you are redundant to the organization that you represent, whether the educational institution, a political party, it could be anything, or even a religious sect. The fact is that things are not going to alter regardless of the political dispensation which comes to power, in my opinion, Vasudha, in 2024. The BJP would have spearheaded this, Mr. Modi would have spearheaded this, but it's taken on a form of its own. And it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years what form it takes as far as our collective consciousness is concerned and our political consciousness is concerned.
Right. That's a very important point. Sanjay Verma, do you think that the opposition does not want to be oblivious to the reality that is, that's so much out there for all of us to see? But do you also think that the lack of opposition in the ceremony will in some ways impact what at least the trust has been attempting to portray this, as an event to celebrate our civilizational resurrection and not a political event?
Vasudha, I just have a couple of points to make. First and foremost, I think this whole halablu and brouhaha that why is the BJP appropriating the legacy of Prabhu Ram? I have this to ask of the opposition. I will not even go into the hackneyed arguments which are out in the public domain that the Congress went knocking on the doors of the Supreme Court, denying the very existence of Lord Ram way back in 2007, saying that Lord Ram is a figment of the imagination of people within the BJP RSS bracket. Be that as it may, don't forget that when Narendra Modi was the General Secretary of Gujarat, he had started the Jan Jagran Abhiyan and collected 500 crore signatures by way of a signature campaign, which later became a rallying point for the Ram Mandir issue to be vaulted onto the national center stage of the Indian political landscape. Who started the Ram Yatra, the Rath Yatra? It was L.K. Advani, who fought on behalf of the BJP for months and years together. I recall one name prominently, that of Ravi Shankar Prasad. What did the Congress do? Their emissary Kapil Sibal actually said that, ya to Ram Mandir banega, ya to main Atmadah kar lunga. So the limited point I'm trying to make is that the BJP was treated as an untouchable and a pariah for the longest time, accused of engaging in majoritarianism only because it wanted Ram temple to come up at Ram Janmabhoomi. And I ask, what's the big deal? Don't the followers of Jesus celebrate, his teachings at his birthplace in Bethlehem? Don't the followers of Jainism celebrate Vardhaman Mahavir and his teachings at Kundalpura in modern day Bihar? Don't the followers of Gautam Buddha celebrate his teachings with pomp and gaiety at Lumbini in Nepal? So I'm trying to make the limited point that it is because Hindus are inherently secular that, we waited for over 500 years to claim what was always ours for the taking and ours for the asking. And Narendra Modi gave a voice to millions of Indians, because I tell you this, I've been on a zillion debates, and prior to 2014, let's not kid ourselves, Vasudha.
Right.
Forget about wearing bhagwa, wearing a rudraksh or wearing the sacred kalva on your wrist or smearing your head with vibhuti. It was considered non-kosher. And today, I can say with a lot of confidence that saying that I'm a proud practicing Hindu is completely kosher.
Let me get Ghanshyam Tiwari on this, because there is, of course, a sense of religiosity, increased religiosity, and there's also pride in that, and I'm sure there's nothing wrong with it as long as it doesn't harm anyone. But Mr. Tiwari, but at least with respect to this event, because like Smita was saying, and also Sanju, a lot of people seem to think that this was also a mass movement. I know that a lot of people also think that this was a political movement, but shouldn't politics, it could have been set aside and, a consensus could have been arrived, because this is a significant event. Do you think electorally that would have been a better call for your party?
Good evening, Vasudha, to you, my fellow co-panelists and the viewers. There are, I think on NDTV, I did not expect that I'll be doing fact-checking, but in December 22, December 23, all the major news channels, including NDTV, Aaj Tak, Hindustan, ABP News, everyone carried this fact check that Kapil Sibal never said that he will immolate himself if the Ram temple is not built. But this is the state of BJP, that on a national platform, a lie is presented. All of us, the senior journalists like you, Smita Prakash, will nod our head, and this will be the revitalization of fake news. That's one. As far as my party is concerned, we have clearly stated, and there's a letter by Akhilesh Yadav ji that clearly says to the Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir Trust, to Champat Rai ji, that इस निमंत्रण के लिए धन्यवाद एवं समारोह के सकुशल संपन्न होने की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं। हम प्राण प्रतिष्ठा के समारोह के पश्चात सपरिवार दर्शनार्थी बनकर अवश्य आएंगे। This is after 3-4 days of propaganda that BJP played out, that we have sent the letter, we have not sent the letter, and this is what is happening. So my summary point is this, that BJP wants the entire national agenda to be hijacked by the fact, by the outrage or by the devotion of who attends the event on 22nd or not. When the Shankaracharyas are not attending, when people are saying temple is incomplete, that's point one. And to say that what is more outrageous, and to say that now we are in India where religion will take center stage, I do not think so. I don't think that anyone here will send their children to a religious school. You send your children to school to build a career. It is only BJP who believes that the leaders of their children should study abroad, while their followers should go and have religion.
I'll come to you, Sanju, but we're running short of time, and I want to get the last word from Tehseen. Tehseen, how do you see this battle of narratives? Because on one hand, you see this whole emphasis on constitutional identity, but there's also this massive question of faith, and you can't deny that religion forms a very important, integral part of our everyday lives, and to tell people that they're part of a political project might be actually very insulting.
Vasudha, good evening. A very happy Pongal to you, to your family members, to the viewers of NDTV, and to all my fellow panelists, and a very happy Makar Sankranti. As we say in Maharashtra, and Sanju ji will note that, till gul gaya ani god god bola. So it's time to speak. Well, it's a happy occasion. Look, the fact is, Indian secularism isn't like French secularism, right? So in Indian secularism, religion is an integral part of it. Of course, the BJP will exaggerate something. First things are happening before 2014. I mean, we were all proud of our culture prior to 2014, and there's no denying that. It's maybe the BJP is living in some land and they believe that the culture or our religious identity has grown after 2014, but that's not the truth. But I agree and I concede to some of the points, and the points is that the India alliance could have handled this issue better. And I'm saying this as a supporter of the India Alliance who wants to see the BJP defeated. So when this invitation came, you should have had a position. Having no position is worse than having a confused position. So you should have had a position. Now, I just want everyone to understand. Let's imagine Rahul ji, Sonia ji, Akhilesh ji, Nitish ji, Tejaswi, Lalu ji, everyone going together as one unit. And then the Prime Minister. From NDTV to ANI, two of you all are here, would have to cover them in any case.
Right.
So there is no point in, so you would have got that space. The idea is to take what you get and to put your message out to the people. That is what politics is. Unfortunately for the opposition, we are stuck between what do we do, and sometimes that's very bad in politics, not taking a decision. One last thing that I would like to say, the BJP will try and take credit for this magnificent temple that has come up.
Okay, there's
but let's
running
remember
short of
this temple
time,
has
but
come
we
up.
get your point that, you know, consistency is what matters. Sanju, I'm sorry, I'll come to you next time, but consistency is what, you know, probably that was lacking in the opposition's position. But yes, Ram sabke hain, Ram sab mein hain, that seems to be the flavor, at least of today, and that seems to be the opposition's mantra now as it tries to dodge the Ram Temple question without, of course, upsetting the Hindus. That's all we have for you in this show. More news and updates on the other side.
For 16 years, NDTV has been a constant presence here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Join me, Vishnu Shom, and my colleague Neeraj Shah of NDTV Profit as we bring you the best programming from the World Economic Forum.
And across the spectrum of voices, Vishnu, because we talk to some of the top political voices, the top business voices, and more all through the next 4 days.
And it is a particularly difficult year of the World Economic Forum. There are wars taking place, there is global economic uncertainty, and a lot more. We'll be bringing you the best voices and the best analysis for the best Davos. Join us on NDTV.
The new Ayodhya, idols and the craftsmanship, the artists and their creation.
सूर्य की किरण गर्भगृह में आ सके और रिफ्लेक्ट होकर के वो माथे पर भगवान के किरण पड़े।
वो सबको पसंद आया और उसमें हमने एक मंजिल और बढ़ा दी ताकि लंबाई चौड़ाई के हिसाब से ऊंचाई भी बढ़े।
The pilgrims, the tourists and the politics. Tradition and heritage, emotions of the people.
अयोध्या भारत की सर्वश्रेष्ठ धार्मिक नगरी के रूप में स्थापित हो।
Every aspect of Ayodhya's transformation and the grand temple opening on NDTV 24/7.
Salam UAE. Are you ready to witness the biggest reality award show to honor and celebrate the achievements of realtors, real estate companies and property developers in the UAE? The Ultimate Reality Awards 2024 is brought to you by NKN Media in partnership with NDTV, which marks a significant milestone in the spectrum of the realty landscape. You can nominate your brand by simply visiting www.ultimaterealityawards.com under the category that suits best for your brand.
The nominations are open until the 20th of January.
See you at the awards.
The new Ayodhya, idols and the craftsmanship, the artists and their creation.
सूर्य की किरण गर्भगृह में आ सके और रिफ्लेक्ट होकर के वो माथे पर भगवान के किरण पड़े।
वो सबको पसंद आया और उसमें हमने एक मंजिल और बढ़ा दी ताकि लंबाई चौड़ाई के हिसाब से ऊंचाई भी बढ़े।
The pilgrims, the tourists and the politics. Tradition and heritage, emotions of the people.
अयोध्या भारत की सर्वश्रेष्ठ धार्मिक नगरी के रूप में स्थापित हो।
Every aspect of Ayodhya's transformation and the grand temple opening on NDTV 24/7.
When it comes to the economy, that is a bit of a worry area for you, a bit of a red flag at this stage, something that you'll be watching with caution?
I think I would just flag two things. First, some of the states, using freebies. That's something which to me is a clear red flag. And I hope that states can take cue from the center and some of the more progressive states that are investing in capital expenditure. That is what will deliver sustained growth. And second, not as much as a worry, but I'll just as a reminder, I think it is important for a lot of the reforms that had been announced, post-COVID, for those to be completed. For instance, if you take the labor law, the bill has been passed in Parliament. Also, obviously, the political capital was invested at that time. The subordinate legislation on that needs to be passed. Overall, many reforms that actually were announced, I think those should be brought to completion. So that's the second aspect that I would actually highlight primarily for the future.
For 16 years, NDTV has been a constant presence here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Join me, Vishnu Shom, and my colleague Neeraj Shah of NDTV Profit as we bring you the best programming from the World Economic Forum.
And across the spectrum of voices, Vishnu, because we talk to some of the top political voices, the top business voices, and more all through the next 4 days.
And it is a particularly difficult year of the World Economic Forum. There are wars taking place, there is global economic uncertainty, and a lot more. We'll be bringing you the best voices and the best analysis for the best Davos. Join us on NDTV.
The new Ayodhya, idols and the craftsmanship.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights?
I'm Vishnu Shom. We are broadcasting live from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. It's a particularly challenging year for the World Economic Forum. There are wars taking place around the world. That is a key topic of discussion. There's also a great deal of economic uncertainty, certainly not in India per se, but around the world. That is also a key concern. I'll be joined on this program by the President of the World Economic Forum, Borger Brender, but we'll also be talking about the India story over here in Davos with a special interview of key leaders of the Confederation of Indian Industry. That's just a small part of what we have. Do stay tuned to this very special program. Well, it is a particularly challenging World Economic Forum meet in Davos this year. There are multiple global challenges which are taking place. Challenges, for example, in the wars which are now taking place in Ukraine, which has been going on now for 2 years plus. Also in West Asia, there are challenging economic circumstances as well. To talk a little bit about that, but also about several other key themes that the WEF is looking at this year. Borger Brender, thank you very much for being with us. He is the President of the World Economic Forum. Thanks, sir, for speaking to us. The backdrop, the wars taking place. How is that a constant source of conversation over here? We've seen national security advisors meet on the sidelines as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So we had 80 national security advisors here in Davos yesterday, including the Indian one, looking at are there ways of ending the war in Ukraine, but then based on the UN Charter. It's not going to happen next week,
right?
But I think it's incredibly important that we don't see further escalations of the wars that are ongoing. Ukraine, Gaza, and now we have a very difficult situation also in the Red Sea, as you know, with the Houthis' attack on all the ships that is passing through one of the most important shipping routes in the world, also bringing oil and goods to India.
Yes, absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit about that? One of the things that the WEF has done is you keep coming up with your own economic outlook. If the Red Sea becomes even more tense, if international trade flows continue to suffer, what sort of macroeconomic scenario are we looking at?
That would, of course, have a negative impact even on the forecast we made for this year. We think that the global economy will grow with 2.9% this year. This is the third year we have to reduce the forecast. We're more optimistic on 2025. But our all worry is that any of these geopolitical conflicts can escalate and spread. And if we see major wars, we see trading routes being interrupted, if we see the oil price going dramatically up, that will also have very
Salam UAE.
Maybe even more than the global growth. Maybe trade 3%, the global growth around 2.9. So that is a positive thing. We also have to say that we were very worried about the recession in the US, the largest economy in the world, 25% of the global GDP. But it seems like the US is going into a kind of soft landing that will have very positive implications. India is the fastest growing of the large economies. And also it seems like China in the fourth quarter picked up a bit. So I think that the Chinese economy will grow maybe 5% this year. That will also, because of the size, is 20% of the global economy. It will also have positive impact on the other economies. So that's a win-win thinking.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about India, Mr. Brenda. It is a global outlier in a sense. And the numbers, whether it's the World Bank, whether it's you or the IMF, continue to be very positive. Where do you see the India growth story?
So as I think I mentioned to you last time we met, I see it as a snowball.
Right.
The snowball effect. So if you look at one of the mountains behind you, you can start with a very small one. And if you then push it down and it starts to roll, it goes faster and it gets bigger and bigger.
Right.
So I think what India is seeing now is like exponential growth. So the Indian economy is around $3 trillion today. We do expect, if things continue with reforms, that there is also peace and no conflicts, and there is transparency, there is a fight against red tape, investments in R&D and infrastructure. We think the Indian economy can end up like a $10 trillion dollar economy, maybe in a decade.
A decade or so. That's an important statement coming from you. What are some of the key drivers, do you believe, that we may see in the Indian economy, if we haven't seen already, which could actually push India up to that level? Which sectors?
So what is working in the interest of India today is that if you look at global trade, digital trade is today only 15%, but the digital trade grows twice as fast as the other trade areas like traditional goods. And China is the traditional goods producer, while India is the producer of services and digital trade and e-commerce. And also services is growing faster than goods. So India is positioned in areas where the demand grows faster than in other areas. So India is capitalizing on this. So of course, there is no such thing as a free lunch. India has to continue with the reforms that we have seen during the last years. They have to even intensify to become a $10 trillion dollars economy. If it happens in 10 years or 15 years, it is just a fact that India is an incredibly successful economy for the time being.
You know, I noticed what you said earlier on. You said that, you know, for all of these predictions, there needs to be peace in the area. Are you concerned about tensions ongoing between India and China?
I think we're all following that very closely, the border. But I don't think there is any interest on either the Chinese or the Indian side to escalate that, because that would be extremely unfortunate, extremely unfortunate.
Mr. Brenda, one of the most interesting themes to me, and I think so many at WEF this year, is artificial intelligence and linked to economic opportunities. How would you respond to those who say that, no, 1 second, let's take a step back, we're going to be losing jobs because of AI?
Short term, maybe some jobs have to be pivoted. But overall, I think if you are not part of the AI and Internet of Things and big data and machine learning, you will lose competitiveness. We do expect that AI will increase global productivity with almost 30% in the coming decade. That means that jobs that are done by people today can be replaced by AI. But that is also the historic development. You know, in Switzerland here, 100 years ago, 95% of the population worked in the agriculture sector. Today it's 3% and they produce much more food. But all those farmers do have other jobs now that pay better. So they moved up in the value chain. That's why Switzerland is also so rich. So, for example, for India, of course, it will replace some jobs that are already there. But then you can move those people into higher productivity roles, and then you can increase also the welfare, and then you can also eradicate poverty. But short term, it can create some challenges, and people say, oh, it's killing my job. But, if you can then not be in the back office, but you can then have a job that is better paid in the future, you have to also have good nerves to be successful.
Sustainable growth, another key theme. We've seen the outcomes of COP. There's a sense of hope, but then there is also the realization that people like to talk and whether they'd be actually able to deliver to ensure that we can keep global warming to under 1.5 degrees. How is that, again, a key theme at WEF this year?
It's critical because what we're seeing now is really climate change happening on the ground. Many countries we're seeing is having negative impact on food production, water, and livelihood. And I think India is one of those countries that really can feel this.
Yes.
The heat in the summer. There's more electricity now used globally on air conditioning than warming up houses. But we're not on track because last year we should have reduced the global emissions by 7%. Do you know that we increased them with 1.5%? So we really need to here also in Davos now discuss how to walk the talk, because there is a lot of nice talk, but we really, really need companies, governments now to introduce the new technologies that can also enable this mitigation of greenhouse gases.
Is that perhaps the biggest problem that, we've got the technologies already? Green hydrogen, for example, is very much the future, but to actually bring it down to a cost that works, is problematic. Look at electric vehicles around the world. The cost of batteries still very, very expensive. It's not mass use, at least not in many parts of the world. Is that your worry, the cost associated with sustainability?
It is. And there is like a green premium. And that green premium has to go away. We've seen it already on solar and wind. Solar used to be 10 times more expensive 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And today it's very competitive. But those breakthroughs have to happen also in other fields, like green hydrogen. We also know fusion nuclear. How to capture, at least as a bridge, CO2 from the air, or capture CO2 from coal-fired power plant and then inject it into reservoirs. So we cannot move from a fossil fuel-based society one day to a totally renewable one in another day. We need to build those bridges. And currently, there are very few bridges. The bridges are solar, it's wind, it's nuclear, it's a little bit carbon capture and storage, but it's far too expensive. So for the companies then capturing it, they pay too much of a price, and that's why you have to scale it up. It has to be the big investments in making these technologies then also feasible, like we did with solar.
One final question, and I can't let you go before you answer this. How would you respond to those who say that Davos is a talk shop for the rich and the powerful? How does it represent the interests of the large mass? How would you respond to that?
So my response is that what we lack today, and that's what we started it, is trust and cooperation. Most pressing challenges are transboundary, being climate change, being then cyber attacks, being future pandemics. And if you're going to deal with this, we have to talk. We also have to collaborate, beyond borders. And then we need to have business on board, civil society, governments. And I think there is no other place where all of them are gathered. And I think the spirit of Davos is that let's try to identify the areas where we can collaborate, even in a fractured world. So that's what we try to deliver.
Wonderful, Mr. Brenda. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Well, there you have it, Borgo Brenda speaking about so many issues, the macroeconomic situation, the wars taking place, artificial intelligence and employment, sustainability, and how the world really needs to come together, and conversations such as what we see over here at the WEF are absolutely critical. The World Economic Forum is an occasion for topics to take place across the board. We're talking about artificial intelligence, the state of the global economy, the wars which are being fought in so many parts of the world. But healthcare is a topic which the WEF has looked at very, very closely. Dr. Shyam Bishan, who joins me now, heads the Center for Health and Healthcare at the World Economic Forum. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us. One of the key themes that you are looking at this time is bad bugs, no drugs, and a world without antibiotics. And that's so critical. Could you share with us a basic understanding of how superbugs represent a huge threat?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on your show, Vishnu. Antimicrobial resistance has become a huge problem. Right now, it's one of the biggest killers for human beings. Close to 1.3 million people die every year from AMR, antimicrobial resistance. We expect that this would be much higher as we move forward. Actually, according to some of the predictions from WHO, World Health Organization, by 2050, if we don't do anything, there will be 10 million deaths every year. So that's a huge number of lives lost because of AMR. Economic cost is also predicted to be much higher. By 2050, we are looking at a cumulative loss of $100 trillion. So it's a huge impact both on our lives as well as on economy.
Yeah.
World Economic Forum has launched an initiative. Actually, it's a Global Future Council where we are working on some of the development areas for this. We are working with G7, G20 groups of governments. I was just there in Rome last week, meeting with the Italian health minister to discuss this issue. I was so glad to see that G20 has taken AMR as one of the 3 key health agenda for this year under the presidency of Italian government.
Yeah.
Because this is an issue that must be tackled now, must be handled now.
Sure.
And government, public sector has a big part to play in this. Of course, we will work with private sector.
Sure.
We will work with pharmaceutical companies to develop proper drugs that are effective against resistance bacteria.
Yeah.
But public sector has a big part to play here.
But it's a basic question. We've made so much progress in the pharma industry across the board. Just look at COVID and the fact that we were able to roll out vaccines in a record period of time.
Yes.
Is there a lack of research in developing a new generation of antibiotics against superbugs?
Yes, there is a lack of research.
Why is that?
It's a lack of incentives. This is a slow-moving thing. It's not like a pandemic that's here and now and you need to respond to that. So the government and the public and private sector, they don't realize this as a huge issue right now. It's something that's slowly developing and it's coming over a period of time. I think there are a lack of incentives for biotech and pharma companies to develop these drugs. There needs to be both pull and push incentives for this. Now there are organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Wellcome Trust, non-profit organizations, Novo Nordisk Foundation, who are putting emphasis on this. They are catalyzing research. They're putting some funding behind it. But we need to do more. We need to make sure that governments are putting some incentives behind this. We need grants. We need some kind of funding for R&D, but also for pharma companies to recoup their investment, to get a good ROI. They need to make sure that there is a good market out there.
Sure.
And that's where I think the governments can come in and they can put in some kind of advanced market commitment so that shows an incentive for a pharma company to develop this drug.
Yeah.
As you know, the drug development is a long process, expensive process. There must be a good return on that investment for pharma companies and biotech companies to get really interested in this. So there is definitely need to do more in that area.
Why are these drugs, superbugs, I should say, very frequently hospital-borne?
Yes, because you see all kinds of pathogens, viruses, they are existing there for a longer period of time that develop resistance to bacteria, which is really dangerous for people going to the hospital. Obviously, it causes more mortality because you can't treat superbugs. It extends hospital stay. It increases overall health cost. But I think over a period of time, hospitals can act as an incubator for pathogens and for viruses and for microbes to develop long-term resistance.
Dr. Bishan, in India, we have a nasty habit of popping antibiotics like they were candy.
Yeah.
Getting better all of a sudden, ending a course after popping one tablet, and then moving away. How is this part of the problem?
This is a huge part of the problem. We call it a bad stewardship, if there is such a thing. I think all of us working in the healthcare arena, especially our physicians, our doctors, have to do a better job. First of all, not prescribing antibiotics where it's not needed. Secondly, making sure that they educate their patients. The public has the education that longer term use of antibiotics is going to be bad for them. It's good. They are going to develop resistance to those antibiotics, and then they will be sick for a much longer period of time. Worse, they could die. So I think there needs to be a good education for public. So good education program. But it's not just coming from our use of antibiotics. It's also coming from use in agriculture, especially for animals that we eat. So from the agriculture industry, for chicken, for poultry, for fish, for cattle and other animals, there is a huge use of antibiotics. Actually, 70% of the antibiotics are being used in the animal industry,
right?
In the agriculture industry, and they find their way to our food system. They find their way to our overall our bodies, our health system, and that's creating a lot of problems.
Yeah.
That is a big contributor to the AMR problem that we are having.
So in the interim period, is multi-drug therapy, multi-antibiotic treatment the only way to fight superbugs, as it were? And it's a hit and a miss, isn't it?
It is a hit and a miss, but unfortunately we don't have a super drug that can work against bugs. So at this point, I would say that yes, a multi-antibiotic therapy is the only way. And you see that in case of tuberculosis, we use, once you get a drug-resistant TB, we use so many antibiotics to tackle that, which in itself creates problem, because over a period of time, then again, those antibiotics, they stop working.
Yeah.
And then you can get into XDR TB, which is like nothing works.
Right.
So we don't want to go back to those dark ages where there were no antibiotics and simple infections used to kill human beings.
Yeah.
Urinary tract infection, simple infections, to die of that because there were no antibiotics.
Right.
So we must do a lot, much more to stop this emergence of new bugs.
And they are evolving.
And they are evolving.
That's the one.
They are
right?
evolving. Exactly. They are evolving. So more incentives, more funding needs to be put in terms of R&D.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, as you mentioned, we want to make sure that we do our part with a good stewardship so that we are not misusing antibiotics, whether it's in our agriculture or it's in our own therapy.
Dr. Bishan, one last set of questions. We've been very closely associated with Banega Swasth India for 10 years.
Yes.
And among the many things that we've looked at is basic hygiene. How is basic hygiene across the world absolutely critical in improving the quality of lives of billions? And the number is billions.
Yes. No, basic hygiene is absolutely critical here. That is a must. And we must educate the public on that front. We saw that during COVID, during the pandemic time, how important that was. We must wash our hands at least 30 to 60 seconds with an antibacterial or antimicrobial soap. It takes time, so we have to make sure that we are using soap, we are using it properly, we're using it at least 30 to 60 seconds. But basic hygiene, making sure that you are staying in a clean environment, keeping it clean, and then you wash your hands as often as possible with antibacterial soap. That is absolutely critical. That's one way you can avoid ingesting pathogens, bringing viruses to your own body system.
Thank you very much. That is critical indeed. Thanks, Dr. Bishan, very much for speaking to us. A broad-ranging conversation, but the conversation on antibiotics and a new generation of antibiotics, where is the funding going to come from? Where is the science going to come from? What about the role of governments? Absolutely critical as we move to fighting next generation ailments. It is a constant concern. For years, the World Economic Forum meet here in Davos, Switzerland, has been thought to be a collection of some of the wealthiest, richest individuals anywhere in the world. Essentially, a talk shop for those who are wealthy, while there is an entire planet of those who do not have the same resources. Is that necessarily correct? Is there no space for the rich to speak? But is there a balance which can also be found? That's something that we in NDTV have been working hard to figure out for years and years of coming over here. We've got a wonderful guest with us, Amitabh Behr with us. He's the Executive Director of Oxfam. And Oxfam's presence and Amitabh's presence over here at the World Economic Forum is interesting because every year, without fail, Oxfam comes out with the World Inequality Report. It's called Inequality Inc. this time around, where they talk about how the rich are getting richer while the poor are, in many cases, remaining poor or even getting more poor. The statistics are striking. Thanks very much, Amitabh, for being with us. Now, in your report, you say that the wealth of the world's 5 richest has doubled since 2020 and 5 billion have become poorer in the same period. Can you explain the corollary?
So, this itself is startling. When you're looking at 5 richest becoming, adding the same amount to their wealth, they're doubling their wealth. On the other hand, you have 5 billion people becoming poorer. But let me start with a prediction. Sure. Oxfam is willing to make a prediction.
Trillionaire, right?
Though sadly, that we will have a trillionaire within a decade, whereas we need 230 years to end poverty. So that's what we are looking at. This obscene inequality. It's really heart-wrenching that you have this in the last 3 years since 2020. We are calling it now the decade of division.
Right.
The billionaires have added 3 trillion, and on the other hand, there are 800 million plus people who are sleeping hungry.
But Amitabh, let me ask you this. The billionaires that you speak about also employ millions of people around the world. So in as much as there is inequality in currency terms, dollar terms, euro terms, there is employment generation as well.
Sure. But that's precisely why we talk of the inequality. As in, if you have billionaires adding wealth, whereas 800 million people, again, I was talking of people who are sleeping hungry, but 800 million people are not being able to keep their wages in line with the inflation. So they're actually becoming poorer. The question is, again, another very critical statistics that we have, that of the top 10 corporations, you have 80% of all the profits going only to their shareholders.
Right.
Yes, so that's, in these times where you have a cost of living crisis, where you have inflation, why do you need 80% of the profits going to the shareholders? Why can't you really do what we're saying?
And in many cases, the shareholders can't even use money of that magnitude.
They can't. They probably don't know that they're getting more money.
You've suggested a wealth tax.
Yes,
as one solution.
Yeah,
many solutions.
Yeah.
What would that do?
So wealth taxes, it's fairly clear. If you look at all data across, and on this there's reasonable amount of agreement, that if you invest resources in public services like education, health, drinking water, public transport, it leads to a more equal society. And that's what we need resources for. And wealth tax has been around for a while. And that's something that the government must essentially do. And let me just, because you're talking of taxes, last year, and these are startling figures, $1 trillion were taken away to tax havens of foreign profits.
Right.
Just imagine what this could have done. This would have really meant, every dollar is about one lesser school teacher or one lesser nurse in a hospital.
I found one interesting statistic. In your report, you write, it would take 1,200 years for a woman working in the health and social sector to earn what the average CEO in the biggest 100 Fortune companies earns in a year. And that's such a tragedy because, there's nothing more than health and the social sector. And there is such disparity in salaries.
If this is really a trade-off between teachers, nurses, health workers on the one hand, and billions more to the super rich already, I think it should be a given. So what we really need is taking back power to rein in the corporates and ensure that everybody gets a living wage.
So your agenda or your belief is social equality and not necessarily one which comes through a free market economy.
So this is not really a free market economy. You're looking at monopolies. 40% of the seed market is controlled by 2 companies. 25 years ago, you had 60 large pharma companies. That's come down to 10. So they're pretty much deciding, as in we know what monopolies in seed could do.
what we eat, if that's also decided by corporates, there's a problem. Taxes in the 80s in OECD countries, we have now half those taxes, right? The corporate taxes. Right. So even within this framework of the liberal framework that we are talking of, I think there have been enormous distortions, and it's really about addressing those distortions. Even an IMF and the World Bank are saying that these monopolies are bad for economy, bad for politics, bad for policy. So that has to change. A final question. Global poverty remains at pre-pandemic level. We still have not gone beyond the pandemic as yet, while global wealth has supercharged. That's disappointing that the path to recovery, to meaningful income for billions around the world has not happened even a couple of years after the worst of the pandemic. Yes, it is disappointing. And that's the question we must ask. What is its role? Is it just a talk shop, as you said? Or is it here for some substantive action? That's really a historic choice that people who come here at Fifth need to make. And how do they look at you? And what do you speak about when they openly endorse, in many cases, well, not just that, they do a lot more, but there are people over here who openly endorse wealth and wealth creation. You're looking at the prism of development from an entirely different standpoint. So I hope they see us as critical friends who are asking tough questions, but the right questions. But let me also say, we work with the patriotic millionaires. Globally, a whole range of millionaires are saying, please tax us more. Right. You have the Mondragon in Spain, a cooperative. Because of their work there, that province in Spain has lower inequality than even Finland. You have this large government, it's called, I forget the name, but they have transferred all their shares to a trust, saying that our stakeholder is Mother Earth. Right. So I would say that there are enough people who understand at this juncture these levels of obscene inequalities cannot continue. Right. It's going to disrupt societies. It's going to disrupt quality. And that's